Welcome to our 21st annual Hector P. Garcia Award Ceremony. My name is Norma Perez, and I direct the Hispanic Center of Excellence. I work closely with Dr. Rebecca Saavedra. I would like to share with you what I came home with yesterday after attending the Univision Healthcare Symposium in Houston. And current data reports Houston as the most diverse city in the country after Chicago, LA, and New York. There is no majority in the city of Houston, as Latinos are equal in numbers with non-Hispanic whites. This population is ambicultural, which is American and Latino. It is important to remember that this is not a homogeneous population. It is just as diverse as a non-Hispanic population. And this population is not going anywhere. It is us. And the challenges highlight the need for cultural competency. Every year, we ask students that are in good academic standing, demonstrate commitment to a personal and professional development of cultural competence skills, leadership and service activities to submit an essay about their growth in cultural competence and how it influences their clinical experiences. Another competitive component of the Hector P. Garcia Award Ceremony is the abstract and poster competition. We have many extraordinary students across all schools, and it is quite a task to choose the best. I would like to take a moment to recognize the judges for the essays. Please stand. Doctors Niesel, Ainsworth, Rojas, Marlene Salas, and Dorothy Piro. Thank you so much for your service. Both abstracts and essays are provided, scholarships are provided by the Hector P. Garcia Foundation. Please, I would like to introduce to you now the president of the Latin Medical Student Association, Carlos Vargas.
My name is Carlos Vargas, and I am a second-year medical student here at UTMB. I am also president-elect of the Latino Medical Student Association chapter here. So the Latino Medical Student Association is a national and regional organization, like as I said, with presence here in our region. And here in UTMB, our chapter is committed to the recruitment and retention of medical students of underrepresented backgrounds. It is with great pleasure and an honor to stand here in front of you to present you this year's Hector P. Garcia Cultural Competency Essay Contest winner, fourth-year medical student, Stephanie Tutek. Stephanie, oh, congratulations. She will now join us here at the podium to read her essay. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Carlos, for that announcement, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm really honored to receive this award. I just want to share with you an essay about a patient that I saw during my internal medicine clerkship. I'm going to make sure that she's anonymous as I share her story with you, because I am really privileged that she was able to share a lot of her life with me and made a real impact on how I hope to practice medicine in the future. Miss B was a patient I met during my third year of medical school on my clerkship. 6 months before, she received a hysterectomy that was complicated by a deep surgical site infection that resulted in 4 different hospitalizations in her local community. Since her surgery, she lost 50 pounds, and her recurrent fever, nausea, and abdominal pain never improved, despite several courses of antibiotics. When she was diagnosed with disseminated histoplasmosis from a biopsy in her lymph nodes, her doctors feared that she was immunocompromised and screened for HIV infection. It was during this hospital admission that Miss B learned that she had AIDS. As her nausea resolved, Miss B was switched to oral antibiotics, started on antiretroviral therapy and was discharged from the hospital to follow up in clinic. However, Ms. B never made it to her appointment and was unable to fill her prescription because she lost her health insurance. She eventually came back to the emergency department with increasing abdominal pain, but was sent home the next day after concerns for possible drug-seeking behavior were dismissed. At the time that I met Ms. B, she was admitted to UTMB yet again after being transferred from the hospital in her hometown for her chronic abdominal pain. As Ms. B received IV antibiotic therapy and drainage of her abdominal abscess, I checked her progress every morning. Due to her frequent admissions into and out of the hospital, Ms. B was distrustful and weary of her medical providers. Her tumultuous stay at UTMB prevented her from witnessing the birth of her grandson, and she could not visit her son in the ICU after he was injured in a car accident. Ms. B knew her medication was important, she told me, but when she returned home, she discovered that the local pharmacy did not carry her itraconazole. Medicaid would not cover her medication, and the paperwork for patient assistance was confusing and intimidating. She told me about her monogamous relationship with her husband, who had vaguely asked her to get screened for STDs in the past, and the guilt that she felt because she delayed getting tested. One morning, I visit Ms. B after a scheduled spinal tap. Her medical team ordered the procedure because they were concerned that the infection in her abdomen had spread throughout her body. She was curled up in fetal position in her bed, unable to turn around for fear of inducing more pain. "I don't like being a guinea pig," she whispered to me so softly I had to lean well over the edge of the bed rails to hear. I remembered the Tuskegee syphilis study, which withheld treatment from African American men with syphilis, and Dr. James Marion Sims, the 19th century physician dubbed the modern-day father of gynecology, who experimented on enslaved women without anesthesia to create the first vaginal speculum and surgical technique for vesicovaginal fistulas. Even though I wasn't present for Miss B's lumbar puncture, I could understand how the history of medicine and race relations in the United States and her personal experience receiving care in a teaching hospital would make her suspicious of her medical provider's intentions. I wondered what Miss B would think if she found out that her case was presented at Grand Rounds. Her struggle with illness for the last 6 months was presented to a full auditorium as an educational whodunit for physicians and students. How would she react, I wondered, if I had described to her the hushed chatter of colleagues discussing the differential diagnosis for her pain and the excitement of the room of enthusiastic learners trying to solve the puzzle and the students sitting beside me betting on the final diagnosis. I share these intimate details of Miss B's life because I was frustrated that she needlessly suffered from a preventable disease. In a search for answers, I wondered how her experience as a Black woman living in the rural South shaped her values, beliefs, and behaviors about health. To be clear, I'm a white middle-class woman, and I was raised in the suburbs outside of Houston. I am privileged to receive undergraduate education and to pursue a graduate degree in medicine. I also realize that it is impossible for me to completely grasp the experience of a woman whose life differs so greatly from my own. However, I believe that this patient's clinical course illustrates how a lack of cultural competency leads to patient dissatisfaction and ultimately poor health outcomes. If I understand more about the intersectionality of race, gender, socioeconomic status, and geographic location as a physician in training, I can provide better care for patients with different cultural backgrounds from my own. In the United States, the percentage of total cases of HIV and AIDS among female adults has increased from 7% in 1985 to 27% in 2007. And 83% of these cases in 2007, like my patient Miss B, were attributed to heterosexual contact. According to the CDC, the rate of HIV/AIDS cases per 100,000 population for African American women is 20 times higher than white women. Many factors contribute to the excess risk of HIV acquisition in women of color. These factors have little to do with the biology of race or ethnicity, but are the consequence of socioeconomic inequality, lower health literacy, limited access to health care, and high-risk environments that result from racial and sex biases in the United States. In fact, many women acquire HIV as a result not of their individual behaviors, but of their sexual partners' behaviors and of their membership in a social network where HIV infection is common among potential partners. The high prevalence of HIV among Black men results in increased HIV transmission risk for Black women, whether or not they engage in high-risk behaviors. In other words, simply starting a new monogamous relationship puts Black women in substantial risk of encountering HIV. In addition to experiencing disproportionate HIV incidence and prevalence, women of color also suffer from greater HIV-related mortality. The asymptomatic nature of early HIV infection might explain delays in testing. However, much of the delay in accessing medical care is caused by the reluctance of at-risk individuals to get screened, potentially due to denial or misperception of risk. Other barriers include fear of stigma, perceived discrimination in the healthcare setting, poverty, and lack of health insurance coverage. Delays in testing help explain why 1/3 of women with HIV infection in the United States present with AIDS at the time of their diagnosis. Mistrust of healthcare providers is another common reason that HIV-infected individuals have decreased use of healthcare services. One study conducted in the Southeast United States showed that nearly 25% of minority correspondents thought that the government created AIDS to kill minorities. Another study surveying African Americans only showed that 44% of respondents believe that patients receiving HIV medications are being experimented on by the government, and 59% believe that information and a cure for HIV were being withheld from the poor. Reflecting on Ms. B and her care with this information in mind allowed me to contextualize her clinical course, and I could understand how in an attempt to sympathize with Ms. B, someone might think that, like a child or someone infected by blood transfusion, that she got HIV innocently as a monogamous woman. However, this implies that other individuals deserve to get HIV because of their high-risk behavior. This prejudice is wrong because it suggests blame onto those that are infected. Nobody deserves to get HIV/AIDS, and as healthcare providers, we must respond with humanity and compassion and without bigotry and prejudice. It is our duty to improve the access of HIV care, which includes routine opt-out testing for HIV of all people ages 13 to 64 years old, with enhanced education from providers, active linkage to care in hospital settings by scheduling follow-up appointments for patients, systematic follow-up for missed visits, and improving trust with culturally competent care. Ultimately, when physicians create treatment environments with culturally competent care, which includes linguistic competency, maintenance of open lines of communication, and understanding another person's history and beliefs, they can create strong patient-provider relationships to allow for retention of care for all patients, including those living with HIV. Ms. B taught me this lesson, and by inspiring me to research these strategies, I hope to improve healthcare outcomes for my future patients. Thank you.
Stephanie, please join Mrs. Akers, President Callender, and Dean Jacobs. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. Welcome to all to our annual Hector P. Garcia Cultural Competency Award Essay Celebration. We appreciate everybody's flexibility as that darn Hurricane Harvey required us to change the date for this event. So thank you for rescheduling with us and coming today. I also want to say thank you, add my thank you to our student essay contestants for putting so much time and effort into your submissions. Every year we have this amazing opportunity to honor the extraordinary legacy of Dr. Hector Garcia, one of UTMB's most distinguished and influential alumni. Dr. Garcia was a 1940 graduate of UTMB and was known throughout Texas and the U.S. as someone who worked tirelessly to make life better for all Americans, especially Mexican Americans. He believed everyone, regardless of their ethnicity or socioeconomic status, had the right to an education, and that no one should be denied access to health care for any reason. A decorated World War II veteran, Medal of Freedom recipient, UN ambassador, and devoted physician and family man, Dr. Garcia taught us that we all can make a difference about injustice. At his practice in Corpus Christi, he was known for treating every patient in need of his care, regardless of their ability to pay. He championed the rights of migrant workers. He contributed to the formation of the American GI Forum, giving Mexican-American veterans a much-needed voice at the national level. He was a guiding force for school desegregation, and he served the American people as a member of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. But Dr. Garcia's long list of accomplishments doesn't stop there. He symbolizes everything that UTMB has stood for during its 127 years. His legacy continues to inspire us to advance our historic mission of improving health for all the people of Texas and all people around the world through excellence in education, research, and patient care. And of course, I think we're all proud that diversity is one of UTMB's core values and has really been at the core of excellence here throughout our history. Our commitment to diversity can be seen today everywhere in our UTMB family, from our employees around the state to our students enrolled at each of our health science schools and to our programs that impact patients. That certainly doesn't mean that we've solved the issues or addressed all the problems. And I know Dr. Garcia would continue to urge us to work to address the needs of all people who seek our care. Since the early 20th century, the School of Medicine at UTMB has had one of the most diverse student bodies in the nation. In 1921, UTMB graduated its first Hispanic medical student, Daniel Sines, and in 1953, we graduated medical student Herman Barnett, who became the first African American to graduate from a Texas medical school. Today, we remain a national leader in recruitment, retention, and graduation from students from ethnic groups that are underrepresented in medicine. In fact, UTMB currently is second in the nation in awarding medical degrees to underrepresented minorities. From 2000 to 2015, UTMB School of Medicine is ranked first nationally in the number of Hispanic graduates, fourth nationally in the number of African American graduates, and second nationally in awarding medical degrees to underrepresented minorities. But as I said earlier, Dr. Garcia would not allow us to stop there, and we don't plan to. We must continue to work hard to ensure that our students and employees are culturally competent, as Stephanie suggested. We must always respect our colleagues and our patients' individual culture, language, and history. The essays, inspired by today's event, reflect our longstanding commitment. They remind us that Dr. Garcia's legacy is alive and well today, particularly in our students. And that truly is something to celebrate as we work together to work wonders and define the future of healthcare. And of course, it's my great privilege to introduce our keynote speaker today, Cecilia Garcia Akers, the middle daughter of Dr. Hector P. Garcia and Wanda F. Garcia. Ms. Akers is a founding member of the Dr. Hector P. Garcia Memorial Foundation and serves as its board president and chair. She has written editorials for the Corpus Christi Caller-Times, the Waco Tribune, and many other publications regarding the legacy of her father. She's author of the book, The Inspiring Life of Texan Hector P. Garcia, in which she shares a daughter's perspective on her father's remarkable achievements and sacrifices as an activist and physician. Today, she lives in San Antonio with her husband, Jim. It's very clear that her father's passion for improving the lives of others lives on through Ms. Akers' work, and we are very honored to have her with us today. Cecilia, please come forward.
Well, this is like our very favorite trip to take wherever we go, so we love to come back to UTMB every year. I first want to introduce my family, my husband, Jimmy, who is like, what would I do without him? And then I know sometimes he wants to kill me, but he has not yet. So, and then my little sister, Susanna, Dr. Susanna Garcia, and her life partner, Nell Hahn. They came from Louisiana to be here today. And one of my board members, I haven't seen him, but oh, there he is, Moses Estrada. He's on our board of directors for the Dr. Hector P. Garcia Memorial Foundation. Moses goes everywhere, and he is also the commander of the Dr. Hector P. Garcia founders chapter of the American GI Forum in Corpus Christi. So we've known Moses for a long time, and his lovely wife, Elva, is here also. Thank you for coming. Thank you. So I thought today that, well, my book has been out for a year now, and so I thought what I would do is go through some of the photographs that are in the book, so you have a better understanding of my father's life, because not too many people know about him, but I think his struggles are very relevant to what's going on today. So I wanted to do the pictures. So, and then we have books here in case you want to buy them. So that's an opportunity for you to get a signed book, and all the proceeds go to my foundation. So I hope you all pick up a copy. So maybe I shouldn't show you the pictures, so you have to buy a book to see them. So anyway, this is like one of my very favorite. This is my father in the Army. And, he liked to inscribe on the back of his photographs. And this one, he had written that he was on a donkey, but because he was on the donkey, it made it a very cute donkey. So that was his humor. So it was a cute donkey because Hector was on there. So. The next one is after he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1984. He's with my beautiful mother, Wanda. They had the relationship lasted over 50 years when my father passed away in 1996. My mother passed away in 2008. This is one of her favorite events, and this is like the only event she would come to. So she hated to travel in the car, but she never would miss the UTMB luncheon. She really liked to come here. And I do want to say also that Dr. Saavedra and Melvin, who is here today, approached my mother a year after my father passed away in 1997 to create this event here at UTMB. And UTMB was the very first institution to recognize my father and his contributions. So we are always grateful for that relationship. Now, there he is, very handsome captain. And of course, he knew he was very handsome also. Don't let it fool you, but he had that movie star look about him. And my Aunt Cleo used to say he was an Adonis. So, I mean, he was like the best looking in his family. I inherited his looks too, so. But there he was, and I want to tell you the story about him getting the promotion to captain. Now, when he got called to active duty, he was in Creighton University finishing up his residency. But he got called to active duty. He was already a second lieutenant because he had, in doing research for the book, we found out that young Hector fibbed about his age. So he could get into which is ROTC now, but he got in there when he was 15. Well, on his Army documents, it said he was born in 1913. Well, he was born in 1914. So I'm sure with his good looks, he went to them and they said, when were you born? And he said 1913. And where were you born? And he said Texas. So that's what's on his Army document. Well, we all know he was born in Tamaulipas, Mexico. So we know that he fibbed to get in the Army when he was 15. So, but when he wanted promotion to get to captain, they conveniently lost his application twice. And the reason why I know that is because I researched all his documents from the Army to write the book. So he wrote them, hey, what about my application? Well, they said, well, we've lost it, Dr. Garcia. So, but he finally did get it. And he was in that picture, he was an Army captain. When he married my mother, he was an Army captain. Now, there's, I thought, a cute picture of an ambulance and all the places that it had been, Germany, Malta, Ireland. And this was at the end of the war. Ambulance for sale cheap, slightly used. And then someone wrote, what the hell is the use? Well, the war was over, it's going home. So I thought that was he had this, all his documents, he had that photograph. And then when I turned 18, that was my 18th birthday. And so I was working with my father in his office since I was 16. And I write about it in the book, how on my 16th birthday, he woke me up and he told me, you're going to work today. And I went, what are you talking about? He says, no, you're coming to the office with me. And I was like, my mother went ballistic. But he did hire me, not for very much. One of the good things that working for your father is you learn a lot. which he taught me a lot. I worked for him for 10 years. But the bad part about it is they never want to pay you anything. But it was a good relationship, and that was my 18th birthday. And if you could see the cake very closely, it says Dr. Cecilia. He had really wanted me to become a medical doctor. So that's what that cake says, which I did not. I became a physical therapist, but he was a little disappointed in that. But anyway, I love that photograph. And there he is courting my mother. Now, she didn't like him at the beginning. How could you not like him? I said, but she said she thought he was arrogant and too smart, and he thought he was too smart, but he was just so charming, and her family loved him. So I think they encouraged her, to go with him. But he would drive her around in the Jeep, and apparently he would go to her home with an ambulance full of supplies when they were in Naples. So he fed her family, and they loved him more because of that. And there we are at an event, governor's inauguration, my father, my mother. It was after he received the Medal of Freedom. There we are with my husband, Jimmy. And there we are, my mother and I. This was just a little bit before she passed away in 2008, where they had the naming of the highway, the freeway in Corpus Christi, the Dr. Hector P. Garcia Memorial Highway. Now, here he is with some of his family. Dr. Cleo is there in the middle. She was a UT graduate also. Dr. J.A. is there on the top. He was a UT graduate. And his wife, and then my mother, Wanda, and then Dr. Hector. And I think this is just such a romantic picture of them, Christmas time at the Driscoll Hotel in Corpus Christi. I think that's just absolutely beautiful. And there she is, Wanda. There they are at their wedding. I remember in my innocence. I was just a little girl, and I got upset with her. I said, "Why am I not at your wedding?" I didn't understand. She said, "You weren't born yet." I said, oh, okay. So anyway, there they are in Naples, getting married there. And there she is, a little bit older. She was just very beautiful. There they are at my wedding with Jim. He had a hard time that day giving me away, but eventually he let me go. So, okay, there he is receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, President Ronald Reagan, 1984. He was the first Mexican to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom ever. So he was the very first one in 1984. And I write about it in my book, how nervous he was that day and calling us at 6 a.m., asking us where we don't leave the hotel for anything. He was a basket case. And so, but it was a wonderful day for us. And there he is being interviewed outside the White House when he received the medal that day. And there's another picture of him with the Medal of Freedom. He was so proud of that medal. He wore it everywhere. We would go out to eat. He'd have the medal on. We would go to Luby's. He had the medal on. Every time we went anywhere, he would wear that medal. He was so proud of that medal. And fortunately, it is in my possession. So we have big plans for it. As I get older, we want that medal in a safe place appropriate for him. So we're working on possibly a building to get his documents housed and the medal to be donated there. It's very, very significant historically, but it was also very important to him to receive that medal, especially from a Republican president. Remember that. So after we received the medal, we went to Senator Lloyd Benson's office, and he was very nice to us. My father and Lloyd Benson were very close, so he helped my father through a lot of legislation and bills. Now, one of the things that was very difficult for me to write was about my brother, Hector Jr. So he was a cute little boy. He was 4 years older than me. So I devoted a whole chapter to him, and luckily I was able to find some documentation that we had written when he went to the seminary. So it's all in the book. He was just a real sweet boy. There is another picture of Hector Jr. He had wanted to be a priest, and my father really accepted it. I was really surprised, but he took him to the seminary and everything. But a few months after that, Hector was in a fall in Mexico. He went there to vacation, and he passed away from that fall because he had damaged his only functioning kidney. So that's what happened, and he was in Mexico. The sad part about that was that my father and mother, left immediately to go to Mexico. And right before they arrived there, and he drove all night. He drove all through the night, through the rain, to get to see his son. But right before they arrived, he passed away. So it was really, really hard on them. And there's a close-up of the Medal of Freedom. You're not going to see too many of them. And there's a statue of my father there at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. That's one of the scholarship recipients, Daniel Isaguirre, and Dr. Quiros is the professor there. So we gave them a scholarship a few years ago to help with the Mexican American Studies program there. Oh, and guess who that is? He made the book. I mean, come on. A lot of people went around Corpus Christi and they said, "Did you make the book? Did you make the book?" Well, Dr. Callender made the book. We were so happy to put him in there. And there's Dr. Protas, and the first recipient of I did establish an endowment here in the physical therapy program in honor of my parents, and that's the first recipient there. And Moses is in that picture, but Jim and I, this is a photograph of us at Incarnate Word Academy. They do a mass for my father, in my father's memory, on the morning of his recognition day. This year it was September the 20th, and so we try to help them as a foundation financially because they're a private school, but they did inherit a lot of students from the hurricane that got displaced in Port Aransas, in Aransas Pass, that went over to Incarnate Word to do their education, and they were not able to afford the tuition. So the foundation gave them some financial assistance this year. And there's a picture of my mother when the highway sign was revealed. And that's at my father's funeral. I think 1,000 people showed up for that. It was really hard. It was a really hard day. And that's one of my favorites, is my parents outside their home in Corpus Christi. I worked at Methodist Hospital at that time. There's a nice picture of the statue, and underneath it has "Education is our freedom, and freedom should be everybody's business," his logo. So my father donated his collection there in 1990. 1990, he donated 700 linear feet of documents and over 7,000 photographs. So finally, after 25 years, they are digitizing his collection, which should be available this December to look at. You can go online and look at portions of it right now, but we're moving along in that direction. And now it'll be available to the entire world to see. I think they only got 300 and somewhat linear feet digitized. So there's some left over that we're going to have to look at getting that all digitized. And there are my parents there with Dr. Hico and his wife Yolanda, and that was at the opening of the Dr. Hector P. Garcia clinic there in Corpus Christi. It was for indigent care clinic. Now, my father was all for taking care of people who could not afford medical care. And that's what he did. He saw people in his office for free. He would give them money to get admitted to the hospital. And this clinic was named after him to provide assistance to patients who could not afford their medical care. And there he is with President George Bush. He made him an honorary member of the American GI Forum back then. So, and I wanted to bring this up. This is my sister Daisy is there with Susie, and my very best friend from I grew up with Shirley Gallagher, and she is now in real estate, but we've known each other since we were kids, and she was like my only friend ever in school because no one liked us because of my father. So I know it's really sad, but that's the way it was. But she hung out with me, and she would come and have dinner with us several times a week. My mother loved her, and my father treated her like a daughter. And one of the things I talk about in the book is how my father, and he knew we were doing it, but he had a coin slot in the visor of his Cadillac, and we thought he was asleep. So Shirley and I could take all that money out of the car, and we would walk to the pharmacy and get sodas, ice cream sodas, and walk back. Well, he would fill that car up every day, but he was watching us from the window, and we didn't know that, but he thought it was a game, and so he filled it up. But sure, but we would do that. It's like, take that money and go get ice cream. So we gained a lot of weight that time, but she was a good friend. She still is. And here's my mother with Vice President Al Gore, and they designated a $75 savings bond named after my father at that event. And there he is, a founding of the American GI Forum. That's like the founder's picture of him. He was like 36 years old when he did that. And there he is. Proud physician. We found out that he was not able to be accepted into Texas for his residency because of his ethnicity. So he ended up in Omaha, Nebraska, at Creighton University, St. Joseph's Hospital. So I was fortunate to go visit some of his colleagues a few years ago in the 70s, and they would tell me all these stories about my father. Now, he never talked about himself or his life, so I depended on people to tell me things about him. But one of the things they told me is that he shows up in Omaha, there's snow all over the ground, and they say to him, "Dr. Garcia, where's your coat?" And he looks at them and he goes, "You people don't know what cold weather is really like. You don't need a coat here." And here he is from Mercedes, Texas, where he's never seen snow before. So they told me, they said they realized he didn't have money for a coat. He did not have the money, and they told me that, he would take every negative thing in his life and turn it into something positive. And when they didn't accept him in Texas, he said that he had met a group of doctors from Omaha, and they really liked him, so they decided to go to Creighton, which really was not the case, but he just could not ever take anything in his life and make it into a negative. Oh, and look who's in this picture. Is our very, very favorite. She was our second speaker that came to our luncheon in January. We have a luncheon January 17th in Corpus Christi. It's our big fundraiser for the foundation. And she did such an incredible job, and we were very happy to have Dr. Saavedra with us, and she still is a very good friend of ours. And there is the board from the display board from UTMB, and they graciously send it to us every year. So we display it there at our luncheon. And we got a street named after my father, and that's my cousin, Tony Canales. He is Dr. Cleo's son. And we got a street named after my father down there, and he always wanted a street sign with my father's name on it. So we surprised him with it at the luncheon, and he was not expecting it, so he's very happy. He doesn't smile much, but we got him smiling that day. And there's Susie with her partner, Nyaho, that famous musicians that Susie said, "Why did you use that picture? It was so old." I said, "Because I liked it." So I think that's she's a very talented musician. And there's Nell and Susie at Christmas. Nell doesn't like that picture because we caught her chewing food. So, but I thought it was, when you write a book, they don't accept every picture you send. So it's like we send in 75, they accepted 70. So some of them we were struggling to get pictures for the publisher to accept. And there, my father's favorite pastime was to guess all his presents. And Susie always played Santa Claus. And she puts her little cap on. Even today, she does that. But I don't know how he did it, but he could guess what was in the box and the color of it. Now, I don't know how he did it, but it was like no fun anymore because we would give him a gift and he would go, "It's a shirt and it's blue," or "It's a blue tie," or whatever. He always guessed it. I don't know. He had a listening device on the phone or something to to know all these little tidbits, but he knew everything. We couldn't keep anything from him. He was just too smart. He outsmarted us all, except for my mother. She could outsmart him. That's when I was, okay, now this is really important. This is when he got arrested. He got arrested because they wanted to desegregate the schools in Corpus Christi, and they had a sit-in there, and his buddy, Dr. Dana Williams, which was not a very nice man, but they wanted him to leave, and my father said no, and so he got arrested and was put into jail. And they told him that he needed to leave, and he said no because he wanted the media to show up, and the media did show up. So they had all these people listed that got arrested, and then they listed my father. So once he got what he wanted, he went home that night. But my mother was not too happy when the phone rang and he said he was in jail. So she hit the ceiling. Here's a picture of the founding of the American GI Forum. They had 700 veterans show up there at Lamar Elementary in Corpus Christi, Texas. And here is my father at a speech in the United Nations. He was the first Mexican to be appointed as an ambassador from this country, but he was the first person in this country to give a speech in a language other than English to the United Nations, the General Assembly. So he was the first, and I asked him, what did you talk about, Papa? And he said, nuclear weapons. And I was like, what? How did you know about that? He said, well, they did the research, and then he translated it. So, go figure. How he knew about nuclear weapons, I have no idea. And that's another picture of him, the founding of the American GI Forum. And another U.S. Army picture. And there he is practicing medicine. That was his very first office in Corpus Christi. Now, remember, he saw everyone, even though they couldn't pay him anything. Sometimes it would show up with chickens, and he would send them away. He said, my wife won't let me bring chickens home. But they would bring tamales and Mexican sweetbread and whatever. And some of them, they couldn't afford it. But he would never turn anyone away. And this is the way we need to look at healthcare today. We cannot deny people access to quality health care, because these are lives we're talking about, not a political position. These are people who need help. And my father's advocacy was to help everyone, and even if you couldn't pay. And we are here to serve others, and we are here to take care of people, regardless if they can pay us or not. That is what we're here for. We are here to educate them, and we are not here to judge them, how they got their illnesses, but we are here to help them and to help them get through their hard times. That's why we're in healthcare today. And there they are, another Christmas picture. And that's my very favorite picture of my father ever. And that is the cover of my book. You see the GI Forum banner, the stethoscope, and the Medal of Freedom. Messily, he would do, he would just wear it just kind of like that. But that's him, a little older statesman. And Jim and I lobbied very hard for the History Press to use that picture on the front, and they listened for a change. They did listen to me. And there is me speaking a few years ago at an event by the Corpus Christi Caller-Times. And, I just want to say that my father's life is very inspiring, and it is so relevant today, what is going on in this country. He would not be for taking health care away from people. He would not be for deporting people. He would want everyone helped. And I think this is a message, and UTMB has the same message to help others, to provide health care to the public, make sure that they're taken care of, but also have a high level of diversity in your practice so that we can speak Spanish, we can go into people's homes, we can help them. And that's what healthcare is about. That's why we're so proud of our relationship with UTMB, because they follow the same mission as my father. So thank you so much for listening, and we are happy to be here. And please take a book, okay? Because it's very, very important that you read about his life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Akers. Well, first of all, I want to thank Mrs. Akers again for her wonderful speech. And I also want to thank our poster judges. And posters were judged while we were eating. They were judged by appearance, content, and presentations. And I have the winner, and he will receive $500 also from the Hector P. Garcia Foundation. And the winner is Determining the Role of Stress Management in Improving Health Outcomes by Florentino Signs. Please come forward.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. Thank you all for being here today. This is one of our favorite events every year. Mrs. Akers family, thank you so much for being here with us always to celebrate the life and lessons of Dr. Garcia. Today's presentation helped remind us of those wonderful lessons that he continues to teach through his legacy. I think it's in everybody's best interest, in particular, for us to be like he was in terms of turning the negatives into positives. That's a very wonderful way to deal with challenges and barriers in life, and certainly he did that very well. And also to continue to promote education and healthcare for all. That is aligned with our mission. We're not there yet. We're a long way from it, but it's something we will continue to strive for, and remember that Dr. Garcia would want us to do that. Again, thank you all for joining us here today. Have a great rest of the day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.
UTMB Health, working together to work wonders.